Good evening, everybody. Everett and Julie here for our relationship conversation part 3. Hope you guys are all having a great day so far and having a good night as well. And so we have talked in the last 2 weeks here, different conversations we've had about relationships and how important they are with your, partners, and with your family and friends, with your kids, and how important that communication is in order to build those strong relationships. And we've given you a lot of examples, a lot of stories, hopefully that you can pull some information from as to how your life and understanding each other better, understanding ourselves better as well. Before I get into a little bit of the recap here, I do to bring up the fact that we've talked a lot about the 4 different personality types in bank, which is obviously like the overlaying subject that we've been talking to. So although there are 4 personality types and we've been speaking to individual types, you have to understand that we are not all one type. We're a combination of the 4 personality types, right? And so what we speak to when we're talking about a particular type, we're talking about the people that lead with that type. That doesn't necessarily put you in a box. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly who you are. Especially for Everett and I example, our codes are nurture, knowledge, action, blueprint. So we're very high nurture, very high knowledge. So a lot of what we speak about leading with nurture also applies to how we lead with our knowledge, even though it's not our primary code. So keep that in mind as we're talking. We're not necessarily putting everyone, like I said, in a box. And keep in mind that we are a combination. So you have to think of it like, in order to best communicate, you have to understand the person completely and what their codes are. For example, the 3rd code that you see next to our names is action. That's basically how we react in stress, right? So when Everett and I are stressed, we take action. That's what we do. That's after our nurture knowledge, our heart and our mind are battling back and forth, and our stress goes, you know what, let's just pick one and go with it, right? But that's different for everyone. And that's why that combination is so important to understand. So the certification that Everett and I have now is we're teaching courses, 12-week course that dives really deep into the personality types and what you can do with that. And we do cover the combinations. For purpose of time, right? We don't want to take up too much of y'all's time. So when we talk and when we're giving you tips and suggestions on how to apply this into your regular life and how to just open your mind to the possibilities, we speak mostly to the codes that you lead with, only because that's usually the first thing people pick up on. But so as we're talking tonight, keep in mind that we are not just one personality type. We are a combination of the 4. So that makes all the difference in the world. Think about it like the Da Vinci cryptex. If you guys have ever watched the Da Vinci Code, the Da Vinci cryptex is the cryptex that has a special message inside, right? And in order to open that cryptex, you have to have the complete code. You can't open it with just one letter or one number. You have to have the entire code in order to open that. And if you don't know the entire code, or if you miss one symbol or one letter, there's a vial of vinegar on the inside of that cryptex that cracks and ruins the message. So you have to apply it the same way when we're thinking of a personality type. Like I said, Everett and I's 3rd code is action. And so if you don't know that, it could have been blueprint, or, and we under stress, we get structured and we go step by step, which may help us sometimes, come to think of it. But our main stress code is action. So anyway, so keep that in mind. So we want to make sure that you guys understand that you do need the entire code in order to communicate the most effectively. But just understanding each type and how each person communicate can help you in your daily life as well. And if you want to know more, we are doing, like I said, a 12-week coaching program. So you could definitely reach out to us and we'll give you more information about that. So
we can go into a lot more detail on that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Just to add, I think the whole bank looking at relationships through the bank lens is really it's a way of fostering a better understanding, of gaining better understanding, and really mutual understanding, because it works both ways, because you need to understand yourself and also the other person that you're interacting with, and where there may be areas where there's things that get triggered between the two of you. So it really helps us to focus on values of the other person, what our values are, where we're coming from, to communicate more effectively, and also to just ideally what we're going to be talking about tonight in terms of our business relationships is how to understand the other person so that we can be able to persuade or at least gain influence over someone else, because we build trust. By having that compassion and understanding for others, we build trust, and that is the basis upon which business is done. So that's what we're going to really look at tonight and see how it's sort of set apart from the other types of relationships that we looked at so far.
100%. Yes. Speaking to people and understanding them in the way that they're designed to be spoken to and understood, right? And the way that we're designed to be understood and spoken to. So it's all relevant mind as we're going through this. Right? So we've talked about.
And so, go ahead, Julie.
Go ahead. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
No, I mean, as we've talked about before, while I've pivoted to being a health and wellness coach, I spent 30 years in sales, and we talk about sales in terms of you have to earn the right. You have to earn the right to ask for the sale. And you do that by building trust, by creating a relationship with that person that you're interacting with, or with the organization that you're interacting with. So that's where it's so important. And so, as Julie mentioned, so far we've looked at our romantic partnerships and romantic relationships. We've looked at friends and family. And tonight we're going to look at it from a business point of view, looking at it from who our coworkers are and how we can better communicate with them. Also, who our clients are, as well as our business contacts and our business partners. And the second relationship that we're going to be looking at today, we're actually going to take a deeper dive next session, because we think that clients and the whole idea of working with people in order to promote, again, influence or sell, is a particular relationship that we want to focus in on and help other people understand what's important in terms of what do you need to keep in mind, when you're dealing with someone else in a sales capacity or as a client versus as a partner or a coworker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
so that's to look forward to. Yeah.
How do you feel the relationship changes? Like the main difference, because obviously it's about understanding people and it's communicating effectively, right? We've talked about that with romantic partners. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that with family and friends and kids. But how do you feel the difference happens for coworkers and like your professional connections?
It's really interesting because it does. These relationships are set apart to a large extent because we're focused on results. We're focused in a romantic relationship. You don't necessarily. I mean, some couples do, but you don't necessarily set out objectives, for your relationship. You don't set goals necessarily in the same way that you would with a coworker, and we don't. In a business context, oftentimes what we focus on is having a common frame of reference, a common terminology, a common understanding of the process, and also the expectation of what we're doing and our part, our role in this relationship. So I think what's important here is in that relationship, we have the opportunity to translate the ideas and the concepts and the goals and the objectives that we have into action. And so it's much more action oriented. It's much more results oriented, and it's well defined in terms of the expectations that we're bringing to this relationship. if you're my coworker, for example, and I'll take the example of sales because I spent 30 years in sales, but if as a coworker, I might have coworkers that are sort of inside my team and outside my team that I need to work with and have a relationship with, and I need to understand what's motivating them, what are their values, and then how we can work together to most effectively achieve the result that we set out or that we mutually agreed to. And so oftentimes those business objectives are what guides that relationship. And it's good news having those well-defined, objectives, to lead that relationship.
Yeah, 100%. I remember a story. Yeah, definitely do. I used to work for Verizon back in the day, and the location that I worked was inside Circuit City, so that kind of ages me a little bit there, because obviously Circuit City, rest in peace. But it was outside a mall that there was a corporate store. So we were still corporate, but we had limited abilities, obviously, right? Because of our location. Kiosk can only do so versus the store where they did repairs and customer service situations and warranty exchanges and all that stuff. And when I had started working at this kiosk, oftentimes, as salespeople, like they always just wanted to sell. And if it wasn't a sale, they would automatically just send them to the corporate store, right? Which then created like a communication barrier between the corporate store. It was like, oh, they sent us another problem, And so the corporate store and the kiosk had issues. When I started working there, I made it a point to like build a relationship with the corporate store employees. So I would call them in advance and I would say, hey, listen, is there anything that I can do to help you? Right? What are your limitations? Like, what can you do? What can't you do? What can you help me do so that I don't have to send you problems constantly? And I used to call them so often, and they really appreciated that. And just being able to build that relationship helped them, because I was able to take care of a couple of things. And they appreciated the fact that I even attempted to help them instead of just, blindly sending them a problem, or at least giving them a heads up. Like, hey, do you even have this phone, in the store to exchange before I send over an already angry customer that's going to come to you and be upset again because the phone is not in stock, for example. Right. But so like building that relationship works so well. And anytime that I needed help for any situation, or if I needed like a special recommendation given for somebody or something out of the norm, because of that relationship that I built, I'd be able to call them and they would, of course, assist me. I mean, it got to the point where I would call and be like, hey, they'd be like, hey, Julie, like it happened like so often that they knew me, but that relationship is so important. So in any business capacity, in any company that you work with, like your coworkers, like you said, even if you're not working, side by side, departments intertwine, right? You do different things with different people. Having a great relationship with that, whether it's, your coworker in-house, your employee, or a professional connection, someone that you refer business to and they refer business to you, and having that relationship, having that strong relationship just makes the whole business process much smoother, right? And you can eliminate a lot of the conflicts that you would have if you didn't understand that person, or if you didn't know who they were, right? Based off of the different triggers and stuff that they have. So yeah, I 100% agree. Relationships in business is, I think, even more important sometimes, especially as an entrepreneur now, than some of your like closer relationships.
All right. The other distinction that I'd like to point out also, which makes things sometimes easier, but also, sometimes a little more stressful, that your contribution is evaluated in business. Your achievement is measured typically. So you have performance reviews, or you have quota achievement that is posted to show where you stand, in the rankings of the sales team. So, that contribution is visible and very tangible. Other than sort of in a romantic relationship, other than going to sort of couples counseling, you're not going to have necessarily your performance reviewed by a third party, sort of a neutral third party. It's always going to be in the context of that relationship, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad. So it's quite distinctive that way. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because within a relationship, even family and friends, it's like based off of the other person's perspective. There is, like you said, there is no real tangible result to evaluate and to look through. So that's why it's so much more important in business.
Yeah, not from a neutral point of view anyway. There's already an interested point of view involved.
Yeah, too many emotions involved.
Yeah. But again, the focus is on the client. And when you're in business, I mean, it's customer centric. You have a natural sort of, something that you're focused on together. And it's just a matter of figuring out the best, the most effective way to work together, to communicate, to be able to offer that service or product or whatever it is that you're offering in a way that, is easiest for the customer, but also for the offering company, whoever is the seller or the provider of the service, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and having those good relationships within a company, regardless of who you are, I mean, just gives a better, just like all the companies that are employee driven versus like customer driven, right? Where they're worried about their culture and how their employees feel and how they are, the whole Google, the Google culture, where their employees are their most important thing, because a well-oiled machine, runs better. Like if everyone is happy, if everyone is content, everyone is getting out of the job what they want to get out of the job, then they're that much more motivated to promote your business and to serve you well, right? If you're treating an employee in any sort of like toxic way or anything like that, like their performance level is going to alter, right? They're not going to be motivated to represent you in the best way that you could be represented. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
And plus, there's all kinds of academic research that will support the fact that, good relationships, with your teammates or with your employees, and not just superficially, but actually, getting to know them as individuals and what their values are, and who their family is, and what they like to do. All that just adds, and helps in terms of the overall, productivity of the organization. It really helps in terms of achieving the goals of the company.
Yeah,
it's really a vital reality check, I think, for a lot of organizations. The well-being of their employees, and as reflected in their engagement. How engaged are the employees in the company? And there's a lot of statistics out there that show, if the employee is not engaged, then that company will definitely suffer as a result, as far as their business. So it's really in the company's best interest to make sure that the workers are happy and engaged and really wanting to be successful in what they do.
Exactly. And that's where understanding each and every one of your employees is so important, because each person is going to have a different value. It's going to have a different set of skills, obviously, and different things that they want out of the company, that if you understand that you may be able to provide that. Maybe the person who really wants, like the blueprint personality type, like really wants like the structure, step-by-step instructions, they're big on budgeting. Maybe they're qualified to be your accountant or your bookkeeper, and you've got them in, promotions or sales or something like that, right? So you wouldn't know without really understanding who that person is. Yeah, they may be qualified, but what they're better at and what they would love doing is something totally different than what they're doing. And same thing with like the action person. If you have the action person that they want, they want the freedom, they don't want the schedule, they don't want they want just the opportunity and the flexibility to do what they want to do. Then, you want to have them in that type to best fit what they value, because then they're going to bring their best work to you. versus, putting them in a desk and telling them to fill out your bookkeeping sheets, for example.
Yeah. And certainly what I've experienced as an individual, sales representative, but also as a sales director, is that, encouraging and being encouraged to self-manage, have a certain amount of autonomy, so that you produce the results on the basis of what or what you feel is important, is very self-actualizing. So to the extent that an employee can do that, they're going to be more self-actualized and feeling better about their job and the relationship that they have with not only their coworkers, but their supervisors and their clients.
For sure. I mean, and that works too, like on a motivation level for employees. Like, so I worked another sales job where the manager was big on the inner competition between salespeople, right? Oh, this guy's doing this. Why aren't you doing, 30, 40 sales a month? This is his approach and this is what. And I'm a nurturer. So to me, that's like looking at it like, okay, so you just care about like the results. You don't care about my approach or how I handle my customers, or the fact that I might have like the most loyal customers that refer me business. It's a different tactic to communicating. So then I'm like, that's not me. That's not how I approach my sales. It's a different level versus someone coming to me from that nurture standpoint and saying, hey, listen, this is, how can we best help you? Like, what do you need in order to, perform better? Like, what resources might you want to have access to? How can we help you make a bigger impact? That management style for me would have like 100% motivated me, because then I feel like you actually care about me as a salesperson versus just the numbers that I'm turning. Right. So it's super important on all levels of hierarchy and between each other. Just knowing the style and how to communicate that.
Yeah, because we can, as employees, we can take responsibility, for ensuring that the work environment remains positive and productive. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be the happiest that you can be at work. I mean, that's where we spend most of our lives, right? There's no reason to be miserable, to be unhappy. Yeah. And especially if it's just a change in understanding and communication style, that can make all the difference in the world. Just to feel, at the end of the day, we all want to be appreciated, like human nature. We all want to be appreciated. We all want to be understood. And if that's what you can provide to your coworkers, to your, other professional connections, there's no reason why you can't move forward in that productive manner, and just to help that relationship just be even stronger.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing with the importance that's being placed more and more on emotional intelligence within the workplace, relationships are really at the foreground of a lot of the organizational studies. So, great thing that it's being acknowledged. Let me just read you some of the guidelines that I gleaned from some of the studies, for positive coworker relationships. And it's pretty basic stuff, and it's very much aligned with what we know from bank. Really, respect people's differences. Yeah. Think positive. Acknowledge your coworkers. Listen attentively. And appreciate others. Pitch in and help out. Show your support for other people. Live up to your end of the job. Your end of the bargain. Respect people's time and priorities. Be willing to admit your mistakes and apologize gracefully. Invest in other parts of your life. Understand that life on the job won't always be perfect. We have this idea that we need, we got to be perfect, or else we're going to be total failures. And it's not the case. If we can be more accommodating and understanding of each other, more compassionate towards each other, it makes for a better work environment. I mean, it's common sense, but it's not always common practice.
Yeah, common sense is not so common sometimes.
Yeah.
But those are all such easy things to do, and even without having the training that we've had, right? Like even just taking a couple of those things by respecting the person's differences and listening to what they're actually saying, right? There's a lot of it's just like we're referencing to sales real quick, but it's just like having that one blatant sales pitch and blasting it out to the world. That's not going to resonate with everybody. And it works the same way with parenting. You can't parent your 3 children the same exact way. They're not all going to resonate with what you're saying. Same thing with your coworkers. Same thing with the different people that you know. The more you listen, the more you understand, the more you respect the fact that they are different, and you acknowledge those differences, right? And you customize your approach and your conversation, your communication techniques in order to get them to really understand you, then the better off that you are.
Yeah. No, and I think it really does come down to understanding, values, and because ultimately, the more the more satisfied, the more intrinsically satisfied we are, the more we're going to be satisfied with our life and our job and our role, in that capacity. So it just comes down to that understanding, really, and having a mutual sense of concern for others.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sounds like mom and apple pie, doesn't it?
Right. Should we get into a couple of the tips as to like how to communicate with each type? Like give a couple of examples of each. We could also do like what not to do.
Yeah, maybe you want to preface it by giving a sort of a brief overview for those who are not as familiar with the bank personality types. Give a brief overview of what those types value, and then maybe what are the things that they dislike, how they dislike being treated. That might be helpful.
Right. So we always start with blueprints. So I'm going to switch it up, and we're going to start with knowledge, just to keep people on their toes. So we're going to go backwards here. So like a knowledge person is going to like learning. They're going to like research development. They're going to like intelligence. They're going to like the universal truths. They're going to want things that are logical, things that make sense, right? So for someone like that, excuse me, for someone like that, you want to make sure that, you stick to the facts and you give them time to research information, things like that. So one of the things they're not going to like is if you give them, unsupported information, or if you can't explain well your product or your service or their job, for example, and you're just giving them kind of like an open-ended, like, hey, this is what we're doing, but you're not able to know it inside and out and explain it inside and out, that's something that's going to turn that person off. A knowledge person is also not going to like a lot of like social contacts, so you don't want to put them in like a public speaking position. They're more on like the back end, like I said, the research, the science, the technology, and the research part of it. So that's going to be for your knowledge. So now for your nurturers. Nurturers, we're all about relationships, community, authenticity, harmony, just giving back, everything that we can. We're just like warm and fuzzy and hugs. And we just want to help.
It's all about love and being loved, right?
100%.
Love and being loved.
Yes. And so for those people, like if you're inauthentic, you're totally going to turn off a nurture person. So you're also you want to stay away from any lies or selling tactics. We can smell those a mile away. If you're not like genuine, we can definitely tell. You want to like maintain eye contact. So if you're shifty, if you're not looking at me, if you're not giving me your 100% attention, excuse me, if you're not giving me your 100% attention, then you've lost me, right? So you have to make sure that you maintain that in relationship. An action person, like I mentioned before, they're going to want, freedom, flexibility, the opportunity. They want excitement, fun. They love competition. So like a sales Sales competition for an action person is perfect because that's going to drive them to do even more than what they were doing before. But like action people are a lot of times in sales because of the flexibility of the job. But the last thing you're going to want to do for an action person is put them on a desk and make them, fill out charts and give them like booklets of instructions. Like they want just the summary. They want just the overall, like, hey, this is, what do I need? Skip the small talk, just get right to the point, and get them excited and fun, right? So like incentives for action type all day long will get you more productivity out of them. And then a blueprint is going to like the processes, systems, the structure, stability, responsibility, credentials, titles, right? So they care about the facts. They want the truth. They want things like they want step-by-step instructions. So if you're trying to tell a blueprint, instructions on how to do a job, for example, and you're unclear in your instructions, you're totally going to lose them. If your facts don't add up, you're also going to lose them. So those are things to consider when you're working with these people, again, within your organization or like between organizations, that it's important to know, because then like what to avoid, what not to say, what not to do, and what to focus on that's going to get the best results from that person, and their best motivation.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So again, in my own experience, what I mentioned that I was in sales for a long time, and I did both direct as well as indirect sales. And while I enjoyed working with customers directly, the nature of the relationship was more sort of transactional. I mean, you work towards the transaction, which was the sale of the product, and then you had contact after the fact in support and so forth. But my greatest joy was in working with partners, was with working with resellers and companies there was a constant need for relationship and support going on. And so I really enjoyed that because it was an ongoing relationship that had immediate goals. You had immediate objectives, but there was also a longer term relationship at play that you wanted to foster and develop and nurture. And so I really enjoyed that as part of my sales career. Can you think of any examples like that where in your career you felt that way?
Yeah, I had the last company I worked for, I worked a lot, same thing in sales, but like for the customer relationship, there were some that were continual and you were able to build a relationship over time. But like you said, it is transactional, so it's in the moment. But there was like vendor relationships, international vendors that I had to like grow relationships with. And I do love that because then you get to like, build that rapport, and are able to get better results, like if you have a situation, if you have a problem, or if you need an exception for something, like if you have those relationships built, then you know how to communicate with the person in a way where they're going to help you in those situations, right? Which is also very important. But the one thing too to consider that we haven't brushed on yet is having like a good team, like a good mix of people, right? So depending on what you're working on, like if you're, say, like a charity, you may want like more focus towards like one personality type or one personality combination type, be politically correct. A profile,
right?
That you may want to work with. But if you've got multiple parts to your business, or if you have a small team, sometimes it's excellent to have like one of each type, so that you guys so you can all move towards each other as a unit, right? Because like each person, like we said, is a combination of those, and so they can all pull forward the different parts of themselves to help make that function well. But you might want to consider having that perfect synergy of having a combination of the types, and you wouldn't know that without obviously knowing what kind of type they are, but versus like just the credentials, right? I mean, so many times you have mostly all jobs now, you have like some form of personality assessment that they have you fill out before you work, right? They want to make sure that you're going to get along with the team because you could be a great producer, or a great salesperson or a great employee, but if you're toxic to the rest of the team, then that's not worth it, because then you're going to take everybody else down with you, right? So it's a matter of finding that perfect combination that works really well.
Yeah. So it's similar to the way that the composition of a team, it's important that you have various skills covered. Like in my case, when I was working in software sales, I was in charge of the relationship with the customer, but I also had people I worked with that were sort of more technical. They were the sort of the engineers who actually made the product work and did demonstrations and things like that. So the composition of the team is also important, that you're able to look from different perspectives at the problems and different sources of values to look at how the problem may be solved and the resources that are required to solve that problem. So I think that's a very good point that you're making, and by being more able to recognize what values or what types of people that you're dealing with, it makes it easy to sort of orchestrate all that, to use again the sort of musical analogy, where it's you have to orchestrate activities, you have to coordinate what the people are doing in order to have the most effective outcome.
Exactly. And I've seen that example, especially I do a lot of work with real estate investors, like the commercial real estate investors. And the majority of the successful people that I've met have a team, and it's at least of 2 people, and it's usually the one person who is more of like the social, right, the business development, who's in charge of like the relationships with realtors, with brokers, with property managers, and all the people that they have to communicate with. And then the other person is going to be the one who's the good underwriter, right? The numbers guy, the one who can take apart that spreadsheet and those rent sheets and the expenses, and really take it apart and figure out what's profitable and not. And those are the best teams that I've seen be successful, is the ones that have at least those 2. Like my father and I and my mom all created a real estate investment company as well. And my mom was like the structure. She kept us in line as to like what we needed to get done. I was like business development, building relationships with brokers and realtors. And my dad was like the numbers guy. And and initially in the beginning, he would like email somebody and be like, I need the numbers. I'm like, Dad, we got to like build relationship with these people. Like, how are you? How's your family? How was your vacation? So he would like type an email and he would like send it to me. He's like, all right, you fluff it up and to make it more relationship driven, that it makes a difference, and knowing what your strengths are and what you value and what you focus on in a team setting is so important as well, because then you can have those different tasks given to the right people so that you don't miss anything, or the communication doesn't get crossed, or the relationships don't get, let's say, broken, for lack of a better term. But knowing who you have and who you're working with is definitely highly important.
Yeah. Some of, looking back on my career, some of the most, the most important experiences that I've had were in situations where not only myself, but the other team members were valued, and our contribution was, equally appreciated. And so that instilled a sense of cooperation, because we weren't, there was no infighting. We were cooperating. We had this goal in mind. It was very, what I would characterize as kind of a collegiate attitude. We're all in it together. We're all working for this together, and we're all going to benefit from this together. And so having that kind of incentive or that kind of motivation, really makes a difference. But creating the environment that allows for that, where I think so there is such a thing as healthy competition, but not to the point where people feel devalued, within the team if they're not contributing the same. or not exactly the same anyway. So I think that's something that we need to be mindful of as well in terms of our organizations.
Right. And if you understand
Yeah.
someone's full code, I just thought of that, but if you understand someone's full code and they're acting a certain way, maybe they're in stress mode all the time because they're not getting the value that they feel they should be getting, right? So they're not their best productive self because they're feeling pressure from different places, things that will trigger them that wouldn't trigger like a different code, right? So knowing and understanding that is so important. It's just like I keep talking about bringing like bank into like the school system. Imagine like a teacher understanding like why the child is stressing in the corner about where to put their name when that child is blueprint, and they just need to know like, okay, put your name, answer question 1, answer question 2, then do this and do that. They just need like the step-by-step process. And the other kid in the corner who's acting all out is just action and just needs a little bit more excitement and fun. So just having that understanding and being able to treat the people in the way that they're meant to be treated, because then they could bring their best selves forward and give you like the best possible productivity. I keep saying that. I feel like I repeated that a couple times. We're just gonna make sure
again,
people.
It all comes down to communication and trust. I mean, I've been in situations where with my peers, if we communicated, we can disagree, and we can disagree openly without having without fearing repercussions. So it creates a much more open, willing environment to cooperate and to maybe even take risks together that we would not normally do on our own. Knowing that the retribution or the fear of retribution is not there. Because
exactly.
A lot of people are more motivated by fear than anything else, and it oftentimes stops them from risking, from taking risks, which is really necessary in business to be successful. Oftentimes, anyway.
Yeah. Well, nothing worth having is easy to get, right? I'm sure I didn't quote that right, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, right. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy.
There you go. That's the right one.
We cornered the market on platitudes tonight.
So giving your coworkers and professional connections, like you could even start out with in the way that you greet them, right? So I don't think we've mentioned this before in any of our conversations, but this is important. So even in the way you greet somebody will affect the way that they feel, right? So if you have, for example, a blueprint is going to want a handshake. An action person is going to high five you. Nurturers, we just want hugs. Just hug me all day long. That's how I say hi. I just met this amazing woman who took my headshots the other day. We've been friends on Facebook for a while, and I met her in person, and I couldn't help myself. It was just like natural. I like walked up to her and I was like giving her a hug, and I was like, oh my gosh, COVID, I didn't breathe on you. I'm sorry. But like that's just naturally like how I greet, right? And so I immediately like connected with her. And then a knowledge person is not going to want to be touched. They're like the nod or the, just a fist bump or something, but they're not going to want to really like have touch because that puts them off. So just understanding that is a huge step. And that's just like, that's like foundation of like how you're going to meet somebody before you even get to know them, to know how to begin the conversation.
Yeah. Well, and congratulations on those shots that you had done there. I saw them on Facebook. She did a great job. Yeah.
Oh, she's so amazing. Yeah. So amazing. I'm so glad I found her. Carolina, if you're watching, love you. She's phenomenal. We had such a great time too, and we had like great conversation like during the shoot. So it was really fun. And I haven't had headshots taken in a long time, so it was definitely necessary. But I would say she's a nurturer too, so we got along really well.
That's excellent. Yeah. Now that I've got my haircut, I'm going to get some new headshots done as well.
Perfect.
Not looking like the middle-aged hippie anymore,
Yeah.
as my mother would say. But
That is
the other dimension of bank that we really haven't touched on. I mean, you talked about the personality types, the profile, but there's also the intelligence. Bank is also an intelligence operating system. So we've touched on personality intelligence, but when it comes to what we're talking about tonight, it also incorporates sales intelligence, business intelligence, and emotional intelligence, to a certain extent as well, in order to do well in business. And I think, as a segue to our next session, I think we're going to go into a lot more detail when it comes to sales intelligence and working with clients, and the sort of, how, the approach that you take in terms of understanding where the client is coming from, much more client centric, but also how you can adapt and be more accessible, because bank is really about, accessing others, but becoming also more accessible yourself, and acknowledging that, and making it, if you can, more frictionless. Make interactions less friction. Having them more frictionless, I guess, is one way to put it.
exactly.
And not running into trouble. So at this point, maybe we want to touch on, what we're going to cover in our future session, and how we can make the distinction.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to start on that?
Yeah, we won't be back next week, just so you guys know. But we'll be back the week after. So I believe it's the 22nd is the date, but we'll post and we'll let you guys know when we're posting. But we're definitely going to I want to cover sales intelligence first, because I think that's highly important. So that's going to identify business intelligence, excuse me, is what I'm thinking. But how to identify like who your client is, like who your target client is. I meet a lot of people every day that say, oh, I don't have a target client that's like whoever, right? Or it's very generic, which is great. Yeah, your product could be great for everybody, but understanding who you want to work with and communicating effectively is that much more important, especially in your marketing, right? How to attract that particular client, who they are, and how to communicate and do your wording and stuff in your marketing is that much more important. And then how to build the relationship once you do have them. I had a great conversation, just on the side note, the other day with a network contact that I've just recently met. His name is Ed Lamont, and he's a speaker. He does historical talks. And he mentioned a great point. Like a lot of companies don't necessarily promote that, but it's your business is about marketing. You have to understand your sales, and you also have to understand the service. So it's a 3-part thing, right? You can't just market and have people come running. You have to understand how to close that person, influence them, right, to saying yes, why they're going to buy from you. And then also maintaining the services and maintaining the relationship and building the relationship once you do have them, and to not treat them like just as another number, but to treat them into your relationship. So we're going to go into that next week. As you guys have understood by now, that both Everett and I have a lot of sales training. So we're definitely going to dive deep into the different ways that you could apply that into your sales. But it's so important, because I do a lot of marketing for companies, right? And there's a lot of companies out there that will offer you, oh, get more leads, get more leads, get more leads, but if you don't know what to do with those leads, with those clients, once you have them in your grasp, then you're not, you can have the best product or service, but if you don't know how to close the person, they're not going to be able to buy from you. So client relationships is like a huge, huge, huge topic with us, because we so believe in treating them just like a family. And being able to communicate and build relationships with them. So that was a really long intro.
No, that's great. No, just to paraphrase then, so what we're looking at with business intelligence and sales intelligence is not only, what you have to do to identify your ideal client and so forth, but how to go about, attracting that client. What are the metrics that you need to focus on? What are the key performance indicators for your business in order to know and estimate how you're doing, versus your objective. So it's a much more sort of practical, foundation that we're going to be given when it comes to business and sales intelligence, and which ultimately is what's very valuable about bank, is that it does provide a lot of theoretical value, but it also provides practical steps and processes in order to identify what needs to be done, monitor how you're doing, how effective you are, and then what are the areas that need to change or improve based on the metrics that you're monitoring. So it's very valuable. I hope that you'll join us for that, and I also hope that we've stimulated some interest in terms of following the bank coaching and going into the details of each one of the intelligence and the personality types that we've outlined here, because we've only just touched the surface. We've really, there's a lot more depth that we go into.
Yeah, 12 weeks worth. And on that note, if you guys have not, anyone watching this, if you guys have not cracked your personality code yet, type code in the comments. We'll send you a link, free link. You get a free report, and it's like your private information. It just goes to me and Everett. No one else is going to get that information, right? We're not going to bombard you with newsletters or sign you up for some subscription list or anything like that. But just type in code in the comments. We'll send you the personality assessment so that you can figure out exactly what your combination is, and it will tell you your exact code, not just the one you lead with. And it takes you 90 seconds, guys. 90 seconds. If you don't have 90 seconds, then we've got other things to talk about. But that's all it'll take you. And if you're interested in diving deeper into this with me and Everett, like I said, we are doing a 12-week coaching program. So if you're interested in that or finding out more, you can set up a call with us. We'll talk to you and give you kind of more details. Just type in coaching in the comments, and we'll reach out to you as well. So if you're interested in that coaching, if you want to just crack your code, just type code. And if you have any questions, anything that pops up, any stories, any of that stuff from what we've talked about, things that you can contribute, questions you want to ask, type that in the comments. We monitor the comments afterwards, so we'll be able to respond and answer and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and just in addition on the code front, if you do type in code and you have your bank code cracked, what you'll receive is a fairly comprehensive report that will go into some of the details about what your code indicates or what your profile indicates in terms of your preferences, your values, but also where there may be triggers for you in interacting with other people. So it's very insightful, it's very helpful, and you can share it with your family and friends if you want to share the code that you'll receive in order to get your report, and then you can compare notes with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends, to gain better understanding of one another, because ultimately, what's most important is that we gain compassion for one another, and by understanding ourselves and others understanding other people, we can exercise that compassion.
Exactly. Empathic communications is what we're all about. That's what bank is built around.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you once again, Julie. This has been fun. I've really enjoyed our time together as usual. I look forward to our next outing, when we're going to focus on these areas and go into a little more depth in two areas that are near and dear to our hearts anyway, business and sales. So looking forward to that.
Yes, me too. And guys, we're giving you the week off to absorb all of the information that we have given you. And then we're going to come right back at it. So we'll be back the week of the 19th. So we'll let you guys know when we're coming. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Everett, for all of your wisdom.
Yes, thank you.
I do love you. And we are
my pleasure. Thank
going to change the world. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for spending time with us. And we hope to see
you the bank
in 2 weeks. Yes. Have a good night.
All right. All the best. All the best, everyone. Thank you.